We are going to be talking about the steps for estimating products. So the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. First, we are going to round the factors. The factors are the two numbers that you're multiplying together to find a product. So it's important to remember that when you're rounding, you're going to look at the place value that you are rounding and the number next to it. So let's say, for example, 54. If that number next to it is a 5 or above, you're going to give that number a shove up. So this number 5 would end up turning into 6 if this was 5 or above. However, it is not 5 or above. It's actually, in 54, it's a 4 or below. So that means we're going to let it go. So if the case of 54, we would round it to 50. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply the rounded numbers. So whatever two factors that you have that you rounded, you're going to multiply those together. Then you're going to compare the estimate to the actual answer. So you would actually solve your original multiplication problem and you can compare your estimate to your actual answer. And then your last part would be to decide whether that is a reasonable answer. Does your estimate make sense, or is it really high or really low? So here are the steps again, just for estimating the products. We're going to keep those on the side and we're going to go through them together in an example. So the first thing we're going to do is round. So I'm going to round my 48 and my 21 in my 48 times 21. Those are my two factors. So 48, I'm going to look at my 4 in the tens place and I'm going to look next door at my 8. My 8 is 5 and above, which means I'm going to give the number 4 a shove. So my 48 is rounding up to 50 right there. Now, in the number 21, I'm looking at my tens place that has a 2, and the ones place has a 1. That one actually goes with 4 and below, let it go. So I am going to let it go and keep that 2 as a 2 and keep that as a 20. So now I'm going to multiply, that's my next step here. You're going to multiply the 50 and the 20 together. I'm going to just walk through it with you guys real quick. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. We did that part together. Now I'm going over to the next place value, which that means that you're going to add another 0 at the bottom to hold its place. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 5 is 10. When I add those two numbers together, I'm going to get my product of 50 times 20, which is 1,000. Great. So now my next step is to compare. So I need to solve this one so I'll be able to compare if my answer makes sense to my estimate. So 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 4 is 4. So I did that first ones place. Now I'm going to add a 0 down here to hold that place value. 2 times 8 is 16. Carry my 1. 2 times 4 is 8. Plus 1 more is 9. So I'm going to add those two numbers together to get my product of 48 times 21. 8 plus 0 is 8. 6 plus 4 is 10. Carry my 1. And then 9 plus 1 is 10. So now I'm going to determine, because I found those two numbers, I'm going to determine if my estimate makes sense and if my answer is reasonable. I already am looking and they're not very far apart. I have an 8 in my actual answer and I have a 0 here, but that makes sense. It's only 8 ones places off, which means that it's very, very close. So I am going to determine that this is a reasonable answer.